who are being robbed. Somehow it's legally, but I definitely wouldn't call it ethical. The expenses in your qualified retirement plan, IRA, 401k, or for you Canadians, and RRSP, they're costing you a fortune. Now, if you don't find these fees, if you don't remove these fees, it will cost you up to 50% in your earnings on your plan. Let me repeat that. 50% of the earnings on your plan. See the difference of $906,000 in interest over 30 years on $100,000 at 8%. It's $906,000 over 30 years on $100,000. But if you end up paying 2% in fees, which happens, therefore only earning 6%, you end up with $474,000. So you can either have $906,000 or $474,000. And that 2%, where does that go? Well, that's compounding costs that go to the 401k plans. That's almost half of your return lost to fees. And look, there's a myriad of fees. Most of them go undetected and automatically come out of your account. How convenient. In the past, when people were being robbed, people showed up in masks. They had guns. It made the news. Maybe they even showed up on horses, right, to rob the train, or where you'd see these people in movies robbing a safe at a bank. Now it's much, much more subtle. It's much harder to detect, and that's why I'm doing this video, so that you can. All right, let's start. Number one, it's about finding the expenses with your investments. Now, in a qualified plan, like a 401k, an IRA, or 457, 403b, costs can range from 0.5% to 2%. That's a very wide range. And look, I want to acknowledge 0.5%, that doesn't sound like much. 2%, it sounds pretty high, but it's just a few percentage points, but it makes a massive difference. So here's what to look for. First, I'm going to tell you about the 3 things that you should focus on. The total asset-based fees, number 1, I'll explain what that means. Number 2, the total operating expenses as a percentage. And number 3, the expense ratios. Let me break this down, make it very simple, and tell you where to look. See, the fee for a 401k vehicle, well, this can include legal fees, admin fees, record keeping, advisory, and accounting services. So this is just the 401k itself. There's all those different fees: legal, admin, record keeping, advisory, and accounting services. So this is just so that you have this 401k. Now there's investments inside of that 401k. So the 401k is kind of the overall structure. The investment fees are kind of the fuel to that vehicle. There's a lot of different fees that way, right? So you want to find out, what are you specifically being charged? Now you can find this inside of a prospectus, or you can just actually ask the administrators of the 401k. What is the total percentage of fees for all these different factors? Now that's usually the smaller amount. The most major fees that you're going to find inside of these plans are the investment fees. The 2 main things to look for are your expense ratio or your 12B1 fees. Expense ratio has to do with kind of the overall management of the investments. And this is why a lot of people like to go to robo-advisors, or they like to use index funds, because over long periods of time, most of the mutual fund managers don't outperform, yet they far overcharge based upon that performance. Now, there's some amazing investment managers out there that deal with hedge funds and really, extraordinarily wealthy people, but for a lot of the funds out there, like the one I like to hate on the most are American funds, because they're about as expensive as they come. Usually have a front-end load up to 5%. That's insane. But you also have kind of the expense ratio of management of funds over time. And you know what a 12B1 fee actually is? It is a fee that covers the marketing of these funds. The marketing. So you're paying for the marketing of these with a 12B1 fee, plus you have an expense ratio. So the first thing we talked about was the fee for the 401k vehicle itself: legal, admin, record keeping, advisory, and accounting services. Then we're talking about the investment fees, expense ratio, which has to do with a lot of the trading, and the 12B1 fees. But there's also custodial fees, which are asset-based fees as a percentage of the overall plan assets. So here's the thing to consider. A fund's trading activity is not included in the calculation of the expense ratio. You may have redemption fees or contingent deferred sales charges or other fund loads. So this is, the fee once something's been liquidated or once something's been sold. Again, the solution might be not doing these plans at all, which I'll get to here in a minute, but index funds, exchange ETFs, exchange traded funds, or robo funds, those types of things that kind of remove that human element that is so expensive. And you got to realize there's places like Raymond James that go to really small rural communities, Edward Jones, and there's American funds that have perpetuated this kind of fraud and when I say fraud, it's legal for them to do, even though it's not ethical, that has absolutely cost so much money out of the average American's overall investments. They're going for the smaller accounts where people are seen as less savvy, not paying attention to the things I'm telling you about in this video that I'm yelling about. I'm yelling today. It's pretty intense because I'm pissed off about this. It's crazy. 5% up front plus an expense ratio and all the all the account management can be 2%, being the difference of $474,000 after that 2% fees versus $900,000. That's almost half of your funds return. So maybe one of the things to consider is not funding retirement plan. Would it make more sense to pay off loans? Would it make more sense to use cash flow banking from cashflowbanking.com and reviewing some of my other videos that way? Would it make sense to plug financial leaks? Are you overpaying on tax? Are you overpaying on interest? Are you overpaying on all these fees like I'm talking about here with investment fees? Do you have duplicate coverages or improper structure with your insurances? I want you to become more savvy about being efficient with your money. Have you fully invested in yourself? Have you watched my videos on Investor DNA and uncovered the best way you can invest? Have you created financial independence where you have cash flow from your investments versus locking them up into this type of plan so you become financially independent, which means when you have enough cash flow from assets, you have more choice in what you do on a daily basis because you're not kind of forced to try to earn money just to pay bills and then try to save a percentage of that money by working so hard and then setting it into something you don't even know if it's going to work over 30 years. And these institutions get paid whether you make money or not. So I'm pretty fired up about this. So yeah, you can go with the lower cost provider. There's self-directed IRAs that just have one flat fee for the year versus a percentage of assets, right? There's even index funds and ETFs and robo funds like I talked about, but it's really about what's the best use of your money. Oh, and by the way, sometimes not only do you have the 401k fees for the vehicle, the investment fees, and the custodial fees that I talked about, you might also be paying consulting fees for if you're working for a firm and that firm hires a firm that sets up the retirement plan, and there might be even consulting fees. So are there fees for the firm that sells the 401k and does the enrollment? So let's look at all these different fees. You can find that inside of your prospectus. You can ask for a legal document from the institution, right? Whoever's setting up this 401k, and find out what all those different fees are. The average is 1.43%. That's the average. Some are as little as 0.5%, some are as high as 2%, but this has a major impact on the overall performance of your investing for people that aren't really doing all that much work, but they're getting a lot of leverage. So find the expenses, reduce those expenses, invest back into yourself, improve your cash flow. Don't just rely on a plan that you have almost no control over the next 30 years. Pay off things that give you more peace of mind, that improve your cash flow, that put you in a better position. Don't just blindly fund these plans. And you know what? I've got videos about the 13 different problems that are inside of these plans. And so I say, hey, I've got 99 problems, but a 401k ain't one, because when I was young and I was putting money into a plan because I had a 3% match for putting money in the plan, I started to do the analysis and I started to look and I'd say, what is the real impact of that match over time? Because I said the same things you probably said. It's free money. But the reality is that money was locked up. It took 5 years for that money to vest, meaning I couldn't really access or have that money truly be mine until I'd worked at the firm for 5 years, and it got a little bit higher percentage every year. And then I had other things I might be able to do with those dollars. And I actually grew a business, and that made more sense for my life. What makes the most sense for yours? Well, what makes the most sense is not paying these fees, reducing that, but it also might make sense to look at something entirely different that can provide cash flow for you. So look, if you don't figure this out, this can have a major cost to your life, but it can make a lot of other institutions very wealthy. And by the way, where are these institutions? Wall Street. Wall Street, they have bigger buildings. These people have bigger homes. They have a lot more cash on your back. So it's time to take back control of your finances. It's time to look at the other options that are out there, which I've got videos specifically on Investor DNA. I've got videos about the top 3 places that you can look to invest based upon who you are, and that risk isn't really in the investment, it's in you, the investor. So how do you become a better investor? Not just chasing these investments and doing what everybody else is doing, even though it's not getting them returns or results that they want. All right, so I thank you for subscribing to this channel. And if you haven't subscribed, then go ahead and click subscribe. Ask your questions. I'm even open to some friendly debate. I know there's people that have made this work, but unfortunately, 95% of the time, these plans fail to meet the result that they promise. Where else would we put money and go, I guess this is what everybody else is doing, and then have it not work out 95% of the time? Well, maybe we do that with our money, but we'd never do that with where we would drive on a road and know the car's going to fail 95% of the time, or get in an airplane and know it's going to fail 95% of the time. Yet we've just accepted this because there's been enough marketing and convincing to separate us from our money, while the other people in Wall Street make most of it and we take the risk. It's time to stop. Would you like more money? Would you like to be able to utilize that money in a way that you can enjoy life along the way? Well, I've decided to tackle all things money, whether it's keeping it, whether it's growing it, whether it's being more efficient with it, or whether it's just knowing where you're at with it so that you don't feel confusion. So if you'd like to cut through the complexity and be reassured that it is possible to simplify your finances and enjoy your life along the way, well, just check out the next video.